I'm Suzi Landolfi, and welcome to Be Crazy Well. Now, why would a therapist say that? Because we all have mental health struggles, even therapists. The good news is we have so much more information about how we can be crazy well. On my podcast, we don't focus on what's wrong with us. We want to know what happened to us. We're going to explore how trauma affected us, both negatively and positively. That's right. I said positively. It's called post-traumatic growth, and it's a real thing. Be Crazy Well will share mental health wellness practices, the newest mental health research, and most importantly, how we all get to create the person we deserve to be and the life we deserve to live. So join the mental health evolution and be crazy well.
So, Dustin, out of all the people that I know and I have met through MVP, I'm going to tell you right here up front, I know you the best because you're the most open. Out of all the people, like even some that I work with on a daily basis, because I don't always work with you. I work with you a couple of times a week. And I wanted you to know that. I've never said that to you.
I appreciate that, Suzi. I feel like if we're not open, then we're not truthful. If we're not open with our own, as Jay would say, fucked upness, then what the hell are we doing? Because
That's right.
I have to be truthful about my own things. Because if I'm not truthful about my own demons, then I'm not going to be truthful to anybody else.
Well, the only thing you also have to be truthful about, the demons, absolutely, which were multi-generational demons, passed down, just the gifts of being born into a family. I think it's harder for you to be truthful about how great you are, all the great things you do.
That is true. It is true.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I never feel like I'm doing enough.
Yeah, that's great training from our childhood. Yeah, right. That's the yeah, but training. I go, well, you did really good, but why didn't you wash the dishes? You just vacuumed the house, dusted, and did everything else, but you didn't do that. Right. So, I mean, oh man. And you know that this podcast is called Be Crazy Well, because you know that I am.
A little crazy.
Yeah, I'm definitely crazy. There's no question about that. Crazy well is so important to me because you know me, I love words. And I didn't always love words. I just said them. People taught me how to speak and gave me words, and I used them without actually thinking about whether or not the words fit what I wanted to say, whether or not I believed in the definition that was given to me. And crazy is one of them, and so I love this idea about being crazy well. And so I couldn't think of anybody better actually to bring in. So everybody that I bring on my podcast, that is one of their qualities, is crazy well. And they work towards it and for it. So Dustin, so you are one of the OGs of MVP, right?
I am. I joined back in 2016, and it was an interesting story, like how when I joined, because it was really, back then, MVP was open to anybody. And
any veteran or athlete.
Correct. Any veteran or athlete. It wasn't just combat. And when and at this time, I was living in a transitional housing. I was dealing with my own demons that were inside my brain. Like, I couldn't stay focused for more than 30 seconds at a time. And I knew this was wrong. I knew there was something wrong. And I knew the issue didn't lie with anybody else, but with myself. And I was like, I need to fix myself. And living in transitional housing, I was taking the steps, doing everything I needed to do. And when MVP came, they're like, yeah, come join us. I'm like, sure, I did. When they changed the guidelines to be combat veteran only, I stopped showing up. And one of the other OGs, Denver, reached out to me. It's like, why aren't you here? I'm like, because the guidelines changed and I don't qualify, and I respect what you're doing more than anything else in the world. He's like, well, why do you want to be here? I'm like, because I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to be like how I'm living. I don't want to be in this rut I've been in, because this is not the Dustin I see in the mirror. I don't recognize the man I look at. I want to be able to recognize that man. And I know what I need for that is I need a team again, because I can look back and I named all my things that I've gone through. I'm like, if I would have had a team, this would have been easily, I would be able to handle any of this. And even if it's just a team that I reach out to once in a blue moon, I would have been able to handle it, but I couldn't. And he's like, that is why you deserve to be here. Show up. And since then, I am the longest running member consistent member who's been showing up. Like my numbers almost every week for the past 3-4 years. Haven't missed a week here, like maybe a week here and there, but not often.
I know, because I see you every week. But wait, the story's even better because you came in as a member. They changed the qualifications. So technically you're not a combat veteran.
Correct.
Right? You're better.
Yes.
And then Denver and all of his wisdom, and I'm, right?
He has a lot of it.
Yeah. He said, come back. Like, I don't care that we changed it. You're grandfathered in. Like you're in here. Okay. So that's a great part of the story. Continue the story about coming in as a member. And what's your title now?
I am the virtual program manager, so I oversee the virtual chapter.
Right. Okay. And you live in LA, right?
And I live in LA.
Right. So you're technically still the program coordinator of LA as well.
Yes.
Okay. So went from transitional housing member, then not a member because of qualifications, to now a director. Got it. Okay. Tell me that story.
So when I was in there, like I remember I was sitting in the day room at the transitional housing and Hurricane Harvey was happening. And I'm like, I need to do something greater than myself. And this is back in the old Wild Wild West days. We can't do this anymore, but we did it then. I remember seeing them going there, and then I saw, like, I'm looking at Instagram, scrolling on my phone, and I saw people going, and I reached out to them. I'm like, hey, that's awesome. I'd love to go. And he's like, see if you can. And again, I'm in transitional housing. You're not supposed to leave for more than a night without them knowing where you're at. And I had my dog with me too at the time. So he's like, see if you can go. And I went and asked, got permission, and somehow they said yes. They said, what are you going to do with your dog? My friend that lived in the room next to me said, I'll watch your dog for you if you go, because literally my dog would run on his bed and jump on him when he was having night terrors, like would scratch at my door to go into his room because he was having night terrors, and it helped calm him down and helped get him where he's at today, which is amazing. So I ended up going to Hurricane Harvey. I ended up being there for 3 days. We ended up helping this lady who lives 60 miles inland. She's actually from Hollywood, which was kind of funny because she was born and raised in Hollywood and moved out to Houston. And her house was flooded. Her house was on 10-foot stilts. She still had 4 feet of water in her living room. Crazy, but we helped tear that stuff down. Then I came back and I still wanted to do more. And Nate ended up bringing in this acting coach named Anthony Girardi. And he wanted to do something with veterans. So he said a speech, and I'm the only one who went up to him and said, hey, I'm interested in trying this. I know my mind's not straight right now. I didn't tell him this because I couldn't think for 30 seconds at that time. But I'm like, I'm interested in doing this. Like, show up to class. And I did. So I kept showing up to class. And then he's like, I want to do a rehabilitation for the arts program for military veterans. Can you get people in? And I'm like, I have no idea how, but I will. I'll figure it out. And I ended up getting people from MVP. And then I ended up pulling people that weren't part of MVP, but were in the transitional housing, because I'm like, this is just another opportunity for you to learn a new skill set. It was successful. We ended up doing a 12-week program. We ended up shooting a short film on how suicide affects the family. So like Nate plays the father in the short film, and he ends up committing suicide. And this young kid who was like 19 years old living in transitional housing played his son because he looked young. And it showed that because of the trauma that he did, how it affected everybody else around him. And I just kept driving forward. And at this point, I'm still fighting my own demons in my head. I got offered somebody from the WB came in and said, hey, if anybody wants a job, let us know. We'll help you get a job. So I applied, and I used to do things like give tours. I used to be very social. And at this point, again, I couldn't hold a conversation. I had anger issues and I couldn't figure out why. I decided to go into the tour department because, again, I did tours. I traveled the United States promoting a video game for the Army called America's Army. And all I did was talk to people. So I'm like, I need to do this. This is like out of my comfort zone. My coach, Anthony, would call this a bully exercise, because literally you're being the biggest bully to yourself.
Oh,
To
I
get yourself
love
out of a
that.
situation.
I love that. Being a bully to yourself. Keep going. This is fascinating. By the way, I just said I know everything about you. I know you so well. I knew none of this shit. I knew
This
none
is the
of
stuff
that.
I really don't.
The film, I knew none. I mean, I do know that you worked for Warner Brothers and did the tour, but this is amazing. Keep going.
So like I'm at this point in my life, I'm still angry, and I ended up getting Bash housing, which is Section 8 for veterans, and it is what it is. Every place I'd go to, I'd ask them like, hey, this is my story. I'd go with my dog because I have my dog who's been a lifesaver for me for many, many years. And I go in and I tell people like, oh, here's me and my dog. They love me. Then I tell them what I'm trying to do. And a lot of times they're like, oh, we don't accept that. We don't accept that. We don't accept that. Until I met a Vietnam veteran who also has struggled in his life. And he's a property manager at a building. And he's like, you're more truthful than anybody I've ever met. And I'm going to give you a chance. And he did. And honestly, like, I've changed this man's life. This man, I ended up helping get his own disability claim in. Like, he went from being broke to getting his 100%. And now being in his 70s, later 70s, he's able to live a life that he deserves. So I helped him because he helped me. And that's been years of doing that. But back to the story, Warner Brothers, I kept doing that. I felt anger issues. And at the time, I'm like, I'm on all these medications. And I'm like, this shit needs to stop. Like, I can't take all these medications. I've been on medication since my early 20s. They're saying all these issues are wrong with me. And I'm like, this doesn't work for me anymore. So at this point, I started doing my own research and reading studies by Johns Hopkins University and seeing what other people said. And I tried microdosing, and it helped. When I feel the anger burst coming on that I couldn't control, like doing the breathing exercise, doing everything everybody told me to do, none of that worked. It's when I took a small amount of a medicine, and at the end of the day, like when I would reflect on my day, like, did I get angry? No. Was I upset? No. Did I get what I wanted done? Yes. Then that was a good day, and that's how we deserve to live.
That's right.
So I started doing that.
And I'm a big fan of microdosing.
I do.
Because it's the only time we give medicine with our own personal intention.
Yes.
Like a doctor gives you a medicine and says, take this, because you say, oh, I'm anxious. And he goes, okay, take this. But there's no real intention. There's only an intent that the pill will fix it. Whereas you did research, you then made a conscious effort to find something on a small amount to be able to help yourself. That's intentional, as just waiting for the pill to take effect and then another pill to counter the effects of the pill. So and I'm not against medicine. I want people to know this. You just said it brilliantly. You said, I took the medicine. When my grandson got leukemia, his medicine was baseball too.
Mm-hmm.
Playing baseball, bald and throwing up in the trash can was also medicine. So keep going. So
it is, because it wasn't just the one thing I was doing. It's like, this is something that allowed me to do everything else that I've been doing, and it helped me grow. So at this point, I'm at Warner Brothers. I don't really feel growth there. I'm giving tours, and not something I really care about, but it was something that I did for my own mental health. Like, I'm like, I'm doing this for me. I don't really, these movies and stuff like that wasn't my thing, but I learned about them so I can be better. At this point, Dr. Gary Michelson, he has a nonprofit called Michelson Found Animals, and he wanted to do something to help homeless pet owners. And me, being a prior homeless pet owner, said, great, this is right up my alley. MVP came in, and they actually came to MVP and said, do you have anybody that would fit this bill? And of course, all the work that I've done to myself at this point and having a dog from being homeless to getting to where I am today, they recommended me. I started with pulling a wagon through places like Skid Row, through homeless encampments full of dog food, flea medication, pet supplies, leashes and collars, like little dog tags that you can write on so like if the dog gets lost, they can get a hold of them. Like just different resources. I had resource pamphlets that I would pass out to people. Like, and here I am walking with a wagon by myself through Skid Row. Not always the safest place to be, giving things away. But I mean, I did it, and I was still a little bit in my head at the time.
I forgot that you did that. Like, I'm like sitting here going, oh my God, that's one of the greatest things ever. Keep going, as I have 4 dogs in my house right now. Keep going.
I mean, dogs saved me. Like we can go back in like the childhood stuff, like showing dogs. Like dogs have been a part of my life since I was a baby. But so here I am, and we're doing this, and COVID happens, and we can't go out anymore. And they're like, well, we don't know what you're going to do, but we'll figure it out. And they're like, oh, we're going to send you to food banks to pass out pet food. And I'm like, great. How do you want me to do it? They're like, we have no idea. That's on you to figure out. So I figured out all the ordering. I figured out how much food to get to pay. I figured out what size bags we should purchase for dogs and cats. I figured out the easiest way to transport it so it wouldn't be you're carrying heavy bags all the time. I figured out how to give the food bags to people. And we did it. And while I was working for them, I ended up feeding 32,000 animals in low-income communities throughout LA. Because they gave me a project, they said, this is what we want done, figure it out, and I did.
So you're telling us when we give people agency, there's actually a word for that. So when you give people agency, or I cannot even say give it, I'm going to say when we honor and believe in people's agency. Agency is the ability to be able to create and follow through and be in charge.
Yes.
Right? So instead of micromanaging, they handed this to you and said, figure this out, which you just went on it, which is one of the things that all of us need. And I bet you didn't get enough of that in your childhood.
No.
Yeah. I mean, neglect is not the same thing. Neglect is not the same thing. I just want people to know this. Yeah, well, I never tell my kid what to do. That's called neglect. Right? But if you say, look, this is an issue we have in the family, I want you to come with some ideas of how we can figure this out. That's agency. Keep going. So 32,000 animals.
32,000 animals. And while I was still there, I was offered a part-time position with emerging vets and players. I'm like, I don't think I'm the right person for this because, again, I'm not a combat veteran and blah, blah, blah. But they're like, look at all you've done. Look at what you've done. Look at how you've changed. Look at what you want to do. I'm like, you got a point there. I'm just going to continue doing the agency, I guess, and pushing myself forward to the next level and to help other people because they gave me a chance and saved me. So I look at it like I have to save, not save people. I have to give people an opportunity to save themselves.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So now you got a part-time position. And that grows into what? Where are you now?
A full-time position working for MVP. And it's originally started as the full-time program coordinator for Los Angeles. And that evolved into when the virtual, so during COVID, we didn't miss a beat at MVP. We kept moving forward. 1 week we're in the gym, the next week we transitioned to Zoom, which opened up organization to anybody across the United States. And at this point, we're growing. We have all these people. COVID, the world opens up again. We didn't want to get rid of the virtual chapter, so we kept it around.
Right.
So we kept pushing forward, and it's gone through some up and down, and they had me take it over. And I'm just like, okay, what do you want me to do? And I've just been trying my best at it. Yes, I lack at some areas, and I know where I'm lacking at, and I'm working on it. But I was able to turn it around where we having a consistent membership showing up.
Right.
And people calling each other. It's really becoming the way it should be, which is complete peer-to-peer, not peer to staff. It needs to be peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
that's the direction it's going right now. So it's, here I am, I've gone from not able to control my thoughts to doing all of these other steps, to being able to control my thoughts, to being able to oversee things, to be able to overcome any obstacle that somebody puts in front of me. Yeah, my demons still get to me. Yes, the anger, like the anger is not there like it used to be, which is amazing.
Yeah, it is. You know, I still have it. One of the things you and I bond on is resentment. If you look up resentment like 30, 40 years ago, my picture would have been there. Oh, this is what resentment looks like. I had black hair then. So the point being is that resentment, and you know, I've said this a million times, and about anger, one of the things we now know is that there's only 3 primary emotions. And I've actually said this on this podcast. There's joy, fear, and sadness. So one of the things I know you and I do is we really take care of our joy. Like we make sure that we're adding to our joy, that I'm not waiting for someone to make me happy. I don't sit around waiting for someone to make me happy. And if I'm in a relationship, I don't expect them to make me happy either, because I'm always looking for joy. And joy are things that I can do by myself. When I dance, I'm joyous. Yeah. When you're riding your bicycle with your doggy and the knapsack on the back, guys, you should see this. Well, I'll make him, listen to that. I will ask him nicely if he will give us a picture of him riding on his bicycle with his dog in the backpack. Anyway, so joy. And then the other 2 primary emotions are fear and sadness. And when that's not acknowledged, when it's not cared for, way back, it turns to anger. So what happens is we then talk a lot like you did, which I used to, about my anger. What happens is we slowly start to go back, which you've been great about doing, going back to your childhood and looking at all the things, all the fear and sadness you had that was never cared for. And therefore, yeah, and then all of a sudden this anger starts coming up. We don't know what it's about, where it's from, and we think it's a primary emotion, when in fact it's created from uncared for fear and sadness. So you've done something so wonderful recently, because most of us have issues with our family. Because my family was not perfect, because my family had trauma. And so therefore, I wasn't always given everything that I needed to become the person I deserve to be. I watched you go through a process with your mother that has been so unbelievably inspiring. And I just
I know where you're going with this. At least I think I do. So growing up, my mom's always been a big part of my life, and I love her. I've always loved her to death. Like her, my dad died when I was 23. Like back to childhood. I grew up on 10 acres of land in Ohio next to my aunt and uncle. When I was 13, my uncle got diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease. When I was 14, my mom injured her back at work and started getting fibromyalgia really bad. When I was 16, the day I got my driver's license, my uncle, I wanted to take him for a car ride because I'm like, he's not going to be around much longer. I had a dream that told me he's not going to be around much longer. And I'm like, I want to take him. I got my driver's license. I want to do something with him. They're like, go ahead and feed him his dinner, which was tapioca pudding. Well, he aspirated and died from that meal. This was when I was 16. I never dealt with it. Everybody thought, oh, you're so strong. You're so strong. In reality, I was only strong because I didn't know how to deal with the emotions. Couldn't. When my dad died, and then my mom had back issues, and this was back in the 90s when they were giving out Vicodin and like crazy. Like we had 3 jars of Vicodin in my medicine cabinet that had 500 pills in them each. This is because the doctors didn't know any better. So like I'd open up the medicine cabinet, I'd stoop to my knees, and there'd be all this Vicodin, and I'm like, this is, looking back, that's not healthy. When my dad died from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from Agent Orange related illness, my mom kind of went downhill, and I stuck around, and I lost myself at this point too, because I wasn't getting what I needed from the military. I wasn't getting any, and it might not, I wasn't getting it. I wasn't able to accept it. Maybe. I don't know what happened because probably both.
People in the military isn't known to be empathetic. That's not their big, push. And maybe even your family didn't know how to deal with all the sadness that was, around, and the fear of what happens when people die and everything changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she and I have gone through changes. Like when I had the chance to come out from Ohio to California, she came out here to take care of my uncle, and she did. So when she wanted to go back to Ohio, I moved out here and took care of him. He was like the last male role model I had because he would come home to Ohio 3 times a year. His wife, I've only met 5 times before moving to California. And after he died, because he died like, I moved out in May, he died in December. His best friend, which was the bishop at his funeral, told me to move out of this house today because she's not a good person.
Oh.
I didn't listen. So years go by, I kept struggling. I couldn't work full time. I was doing what I thought I had to do because I didn't have any guidance elsewhere. I didn't have a team. And when I finally decided to stand up for myself, I said, I'm going to move. I want to move out in 3 months. Turned out 3 months ended up being 1 day because I was out the next day. And I kept struggling. My mom, like, she kept struggling too. At this point, she's starting to forget things in her life. And I had this other dream where I was like, she's struggling because she's not moved on from your father. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I know what I need to do. I ended up doing GoFundMe, and one of my dad's students gave me the money to do the headstone, which is amazing. And him and I are still connected to this day.
Wow, that's great story.
My mom disowned me at this point. She's like, I never want to talk to you again. You had no right, blah, blah, blah. Well, I did it. 3 months later, she apologized. And then a couple months, and this is when I'm in the transitional housing at this point, because there were other things that happened along the way, like sexual assault from an employer and everything else. But that's back then.
That's pretty bad.
It was pretty bad because I had no team and I lost. Like I was at work crying. Like I was a mess. Like I couldn't go to work. I called off work for 3 months, and when they wanted to give me help, I blew up and told them what the other boss did. So not only did I get let go, but he got let go too. Probably good. I kept moving forward, but I didn't know what to do, and I ended up writing, and I said I need to change myself, and I said, okay, I need to let go of everything. I actually microdosed. I ended up writing in my house all crazy thoughts, and I kept moving forward. Well, by moving forward, I was able to continue helping my mom. By being in the transitional housing, I read the manual or the VA handbook that said she qualifies for a pension because my father died of this illness. I sent her the pages, told her what to do. It took her 3 months. She went and did this. Now she's getting a pension for the rest of her life, as long as she doesn't get married.
Yeah.
From the Navy, because my dad died of an illness that's directly related to Agent Orange.
Mm-hmm.
Continues going on. Like, we still haven't seen each other. I go home for the first time. I didn't go home for the first time. I met up with her in Laughlin last year, and we had a good time. Met up with her again, and I forget where else. But I met up with her again, and then I ended up going home this Christmas. And again, my mom has been in a ton of pain because of the fibromyalgia, where the doctors have had her all the way up to like Oxycontin, and they've given her morphine before for her pain, because this pain is just absolutely unreal that she goes through. So I go home and she's looking at me and she's like, why is the one side of your face a little droopy? I'm like, well, when I was coming off all the medications, when I lost my insurance, I had to come off all this medication cold turkey, and it caused many seizures in my body. So of course I'm working on fixing it, but I'm like, watch this. And I ended up microdosing, and she's like, do you see it rise? I'm like, did it rise a little bit? She's like, it did. I'm like, I can feel it rising on my face. And she's just like, that's amazing. I'm just like, and I told her, like, there's been studies where this helps fibromyalgia, like relieves the pain. And she wasn't sure about it because, nursing, and she didn't want to lose her credentials. But after, so I arrived there, and then a couple days later, she's like, I want to try this. So we did. And she's just like, I'm no longer in pain. And when I ended up flying home, and I'm like, do you want it? And I ended up giving her a bunch of them. And she's just like, this is amazing. But when I was flying home, she ended up driving me to the airport. And the woman hasn't done this in years. We drove to the airport. We had a nice conversation. We ended up talking about everything. And I asked her, I'm like, do your body checks, do everything that you're going through. I want to know how you're feeling. I want you to check in with yourself. like you've never done before, because we're doing something completely different. So check in, because that's what I had to do. And she has been. And she now has been doing it since Christmas. She doesn't have the pain like she used to. Like before, it felt like somebody was attacking her back with a knife, she says. And now she's like, I'm in pain, but it's not the same pain. It's the pain because I haven't moved in 20 years.
Right.
And
People
she's like,
don't understand that. My pain is when I don't move, not when I move.
but the pain from the overreactive nerves from the fibromyalgia was causing her unable to move. And now she relieved that pain by microdosing, and now she can move, but she's like, I'm hurting, but I'm like, continue moving. She's like, I am. I'm like, your body checks that you told me to do helped me tremendously.
Yeah.
So she's moving now. She's able to get up, and I haven't seen her this happy since the mid 90s.
Yeah, I was going to say since you were 16 when she had the car crash.
No, it was nobody. No, there's no car crash.
What was it that hurt her back? Something.
She hurt her back pushing a back. She was a nurse at the ICU. She hurt her back.
Okay, that's what it was.
And then,
right. But that I'm going to go all the way back to there.
Yeah,
that's how long it's been, because that's the first injury, the first real thing, and then all the other stuff that came on top. I want you to know that every great psychologist, doctor, disruptor of the mental health way of treating, all of them that are truly doing great work and research and making sure that we have a mental health evolution. We still don't. We started by drilling holes in people's heads to let the demons out. You talked about demons. We would have drilled a hole in your head years ago to let them out. We don't do that anymore, thank God. But we still do some things that don't work. And somehow this gets me so upset. I get so sad and scared when I think about all the medication that we push on, especially veterans in the VA, and we won't take a look at some of the natural medicines and some are manufactured medicines, and less is more. Here in our culture is more is better. And even
less is better. Less is better.
Yeah, less is better. And then we don't talk about what the food does to us. That processed food is not food. And most of it's chemicals that are not something that the body actually needs or wants. So I have to tell you, if we don't have disruptors, if we don't have courageous people like yourself, Dustin, to look forward, to try things, to want to get better, and that you have an open mind and open heart to all what that means, we would still be hitting each other over the head with clubs and drilling holes in people's head. It is men and women like you, not just doctors, not just psychiatrists, but men and women like you that say, I'm not doing this anymore. There's got to be a better way. The yoga practitioners, alternative medicine, the fact that we even call it alternative medicine is ridiculous. Like, that's medicine when you do yoga. That's medicine when you do certain things that are not
like MVP. We work out first.
Yeah.
Like that we do that for a reason, because it's medicine. It's like we're more inclined to open up to our peers after we get a sweat on. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at in the US. That's the beauty of the virtual chapter, is you get a sweat on and then you're opening up to somebody. You have that team.
What's so nice about the virtual chapter for MVP, and for all of you that may not know what MVP is, it stands for Emerging Vets and Players. And we're in 7 cities around the country. And now we have this wonderful virtual chapter that we call it. And there's men and women from all over the United States, members. And Dustin leads that huddle and that program. And what's so great about that particular chapter is the fact that we have people from all over the country, that we're getting information, cultural differences, all kinds of cultural information, and they are not left out. So if somebody lives in Oklahoma, one member lives in Oklahoma, they would never be able to be in a chapter. And now they have that chapter.
And they have a chapter, and they can, when they go on vacation, they can visit LA, they can visit Las Vegas, they can visit any chapter and show up and have a team and be like, well, this is cool.
Yeah.
Let's go have lunch. Like, let's do something.
Yeah, it's remarkable. So I'm just gonna ask you one more question. One of the things that I'm always amazed at is how much work you do on yourself on a daily basis, because I see it, I watch it, I get to experience, I get to have the results of it. I get to talk to you sometimes about the struggle. And then I get to also see the wonderful progress that you make, and you help me. Like, we are in constant contact, and I really appreciate that. It helps me too. What's the next thing for you?
Well, the next thing for me is I know I need to be better at my diet. As we talk about processed food, and I'm coming to that conclusion, like I need to be better at that. So that's like the next thing I'm trying to work on. I do work out. I work out 3, 4, 5 times a week. I'm riding my bike, as you mentioned. I'm just always staying busy. I want to get more involved in social sports again, because when I moved to California, like that was the one thing I did down in Anaheim. Like that was my outlet from taking care of my aunt. And I do want to tell you a funny story about this too, because I had a part-time job working at the airline, and the guy who ran Club Waka was, I
Club
heard of,
Waka. Tell me what.
Club Waka is an adult social sport league. So they have fun games where people are like wild and crazy, and then they have serious games where you take it a lot more serious. But they do kickball, they do dodgeball, they do volleyball, they do soccer, they do all these different social sports throughout the country. And they meet once a year in Las Vegas for a crazy party, because it's Vegas for like 5 days with like 5,000 different people there for the same reason, for this sport. So I hear this voice on the other side of the pillar. I'm like, this voice sounds familiar. And he missed his flight. And I hear it. I run around. He's like, oh, I knew the guy. I'm like, it's Saw. I'm like, I know this guy. I'm like, he's like, oh, I missed my flight. Can you help me? I'm like, I'll see what I can do. I asked my boss if he could hold the plane to get his bags on. He said, sure. So I ended up walking to the front of security. Not only did I get him on his plane within 20 minutes, and I got his bags checked, and he made it there safely. So when I started to struggle, he's just like, he knew my heart. He ended up allowing me to work for him for tournaments part-time. And working for him tournaments part-time gave me hope, which is something I was missing. He allowed me to participate in events, like participate in local events. He's like, here's a code. Feel free to play this semester. I know what you're going through. Thank you for being open and honest. Because as we talked about earlier, my openness is helpful, because then it helps me move forward. Because if I'm saying this is what I'm going through, can you help me with whatever you can do, I appreciate.
Right.
I've never expected anything. Well, it got to a point where I'm like, I need help. I'm not going to do this anymore. So I told him, like, you know what? I'm going to step away, and I'm going to continue working on my mental health, and I'll be back when I'm physically and mentally ready, because there's something with here. A couple years go by, and we had a meeting. So SoFi Stadium got a phone call saying, hey, we want to do from this organization saying we want to do a kickball tournament at SoFi Stadium where we raise money for a nonprofit. Do you have anything? Lo and behold, they recommended MVP. So I hop on this phone call, and here I am with this guy that saved my life basically by giving me opportunities. I'm like, hey, how you doing, Sal? Like, it's a pleasure to see you. Like, this has changed me. And he's just like, holy. So it's such a small world. Like, when you try to be as positive as you can, that something like SoFi Stadium gets you connected back with your old team and brings you together. Like, I'm just like, that just doesn't happen. Even though I still don't play with them or do things with them as often as I'd like, they were a huge part of my life in changing myself to become the better person.
You know, I always say that when you start to do what you deserve to do, the healing you deserve to do, the universe conspires to help you. And I am not surprised that you came full circle. I call it an evolution. It's a spiral staircase. You know, spiral staircase comes back to where you started, but you're another level. And then you go around it again, and it looks like you're coming right back to where you started, but you're another level. And so I see growth as a spiral staircase. And so I'm not surprised that all of a sudden there you are doing this great work. And he's like, holy crap, look who's like, this is amazing. And it helps him too. We know it helps us, but it helps him too. This guy helped me. Dustin helped me when I needed help. And then I helped him by introducing him to Club Walk and let him do all that.
Oh, I already knew about it then, but
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, but you knew about it. But I mean, he gave you this, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is
He helped me
exactly.
when I was at the low to stay connected.
That's right. And that's right. And that's the best. And that's, well, then you just said the last word we should really talk about, which is connection, not control.
Mhm.
And that idea that we're all here, we're always all connected. We have to just make sure that we embrace it and we help fertilize it. Connection is everything. Babies die when they don't have connection, like literally die. So it's the most important thing we can do. And I would say you are a professional superstar connector. That's what you do, Dustin. And
Thank
you
you.
have reconnected in a better way with your own mother. And you help our members reconnect, and you connect constantly with your growth. Like, oh, I got to eat better. That's a connection to your well-being, your commitment to your well-being. And we don't have to always want or need someone to be perfect. We do deserve to have someone who's committed to their growth. That's all I need to know in people that I'm vulnerable to, right? Is I need to know that they're committed to their growth. So when they're struggling, I have perfect faith that they'll figure it out and they'll tell me what they need. I'll be there. I got it. And I know they'll do the work. You're one of those people.
And that's what I love about MVP, because we're full of people who are committed to their growth.
That's exactly.
And the people who aren't don't show up. The
That's it.
people who are continue to show up.
That's true. Dustin, I am so grateful to you. I love that you and I get on texts and we have we have an undercurrent. We have almost like an underground railroad in MVP where we're helping ourselves and we don't necessarily need to tell the administrators everything because we're working on stuff. And I love that about you. I love that you are always thinking, always improving, always wanting to face your demons, as you said, and kick them in the ass. And I so appreciate that about you. And MVP is so lucky to have you. And I'm grateful to call you a friend.
I am grateful to be here. I call you a mentor. I look at you like, okay, what? I'll ask myself, like, what would Suzi do?
Oh my God, that's like, where's Waldo? And like, what would, what it was like, that's right. I love that. Well, I appreciate that. And remember, it's a two-way. Like our relationship is a connection so that I get to know that if I need to call and ask you, which you know I've done, and said, hey, Dustin, I need help with this. Hey, Dustin, can you help me with that? I know that you're there and I feel safe asking you. I know because I know how you're going to treat me. You're not going to say yes when you can't, right? So that then all of a sudden you're resentful about doing it, right? I know you're going to say, yes, I can, or no, I can't right now. Can you wait? Blah, blah. Like that is such safety to me. And that's a principled person, and principled people are safe. So that's how I experience you. And I want you to know that. And that's a huge, big deal for me. I didn't get that in my childhood. Not a whole lot of principled people, one or two that were great.
I had a few which were good people in my
Yeah.
childhood.
Yeah.
We all go through struggles, and the people who affected me negatively, they got their own issues. They got their own, as Jay would call it, the gray.
The gray. So of course, which I have a lot of. Okay. So you know, the theme song is written by a young man named Calvin Love, and it's called Be Your Best Self. I might have to change it to Be More Like Dustin. That just might need to be, that might, yes, that might be exactly right. And I know I'm going to get emails and calls about this particular podcast, and they're going to go, okay, I'm going to be more like Dustin. Dustin, I adore you.
Just live your best life. Like, just do what you, this is the only life we're guaranteed. Like, live your best.
Absolutely. Bless you. This has been Be Crazy Well. And Dustin, I need your full name and where you are in the military. So just give me your full name. You're in the military. And don't forget to send me a bio and a photograph. And we're going to put that up. And this should air, right. This will air the coming Monday. And I'm just, again, blessed. So give me your full name, or everybody, I know your full name, and where you served.
My name is Dustin Belusack. I was in the Army National Guard from 99 to 2006. And yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Bless you. Bless everybody. Be crazy well. And thank you, Dustin.
Thank you, Suzi.
Take care.
Love yourself.